Welcome to the annual Golden Beano Awards, where all the awards go to Earthworm Jim 3D by default. The Game Awards are upon us again. I cannot wait for my yearly disappointment as games that I don't care about at all are pumped full of awards that they don't deserve, with some very middling game announcements sprinkled throughout. Gaming events are always fun, no matter how lame the announcements are. It's one of those experiences that we can all share with each other in real time without spending $90 on a game on launch date. And everything's more fun when you can share it with others, even if it's not what you hoped it would be. November has been a very slow month on my channel as I've been focusing on the Christmas ROM hack fan game marathon thingy, so I thought it'd be a good time to have a little retrospective on the previous Game Awards shows, just so I can say I uploaded something this month and we can all laugh and cry about all the wrong selections because, let's be honest, none of these awards really matter at all, which is why I'm taking it as seriously as possible. So let's hop in a time machine back to 2014. The Game Awards as we know them officially started in 2014. If you want to get technical, Geoff was previously hosting the Spike Video Game Awards, which served largely the same function, but this was the first officially titled Game Awards, and if I go too far back, we'll be here all day. I didn't actually get to see this one while it was happening, since I didn't even know it was a thing. In retrospect though, I kinda like it. The budget and the polish is not on par with future shows, and the microphones are way too quiet to the point that I have to crank my speakers to the moon just to hear a single word out of Jeffy's mouth. But I guess that's why they say humble beginnings. Because there weren't a billion sponsors and advertisers yet, it really is much more convincing as a love letter to video games, which is supposed to be the whole point. It even opens with Koji Kondo playing the Super Mario Bros. Theme live on a piano. It's one thing to tell a machine to play notes, but to play an instrument live is another ballgame. I know I wouldn't have done that. And this man is one of the single greatest composers in the video game world. Then Reginald shows up to start promoting Mario Maker. Now, I love Mario Maker, but this announcement kind of established a pattern with the Game Awards where it became much more about a bunch of companies taking advantage of the big event to promote a bunch of new stuff. And to some extent, that's pretty much what became the real draw of the show. On top of being like the video game equivalent of the Golden Globes, it doubled as a miniature E3. Kiefer Sutherland showed up to talk about MGS5 and introduce Kojima, who introduced another guy who introduced Metal Gear Online. In case you're not familiar with that, the Metal Gear series has had numerous attempts at online play, which were apparently pretty rad. I didn't play them very much, but there was a feature in MGS5 where you could put down a puppy, which would cause your character to stop in place and lose their mind over how cute the puppy was. And there was also a feature where you could Fulton recover your enemies. You could shoot each other with Walker Gears. From what I remember, it was fucking amazing, even though I didn't get to play it much. Seeing hyped up trailers for MGS5 really takes me back. When this game was coming out, I honestly thought it was going to be the greatest piece of fiction ever created. And to some extent, it kinda was. Although the story did some Kojima plot twists that I thought were kind of lame at the time, I have almost zero complaints about the gameplay. Then the guy from Double Fine shows up and makes a bunch of lame self-deprecating jokes. Then they brought out the Best Performance Award, and one of the nominees was Trey Parker for the South Park games, and I'm like, really? I mean, I'm not dissing South Park, but Cartman literally just sounds like a deeper version of Stan now. Is this really an exemplary voice actor? And he won. How did he win? What type of bullshit is this now? They showed off Tacoma, made by the creators of Gone Home. From what I understand, this game had roughly 5% more gameplay than Gone Home. Dying Light, I never played this one, but I got a sequel early this year, so I'm sure it got at least 65 on Metacritic. Bloodborne. Elden Ring sold me on FromSoft's games, so I'm automatically a fan of anything that comes out of them. Of course, it wasn't good enough to come to PC. Was it, FromSoft? It's not on PC. 2015 game, still not on PC. I hate you. That's when it cuts to Conan O'Brien talking about Dragon Age Inquisition. I've never been a fan of talk show hosts, but at least it wasn't James Corden or Jimmy Fallon. Conan announces all the nominees for the Game of the Year over the course of the entire event. I don't know why him, of all people, but hey, if you're a Conan fan, Well, there you go. iJustine and Boogie2988 showed up to announce the Trending Gamer Award. I never associated iJustine with video games. I mean, how can you be a gamer and name yourself after an Apple product? Come on now. Would you be playing Crappy Bird? Seeing the nominees makes me feel really old. The only two names I recognize off the top of my head are PewDiePie and Total Biscuit. Hell, even Boogie and Justine make me feel really old. I used to watch those Francis videos all the time. Of course, the winner of the award was Total Biscuit. Now, there are people on the internet today who don't know who Total Biscuit was, but back then, he was an important voice in the community, a bold and brash and somewhat controversial figure in games media. It was very heartwarming to see him win this award. In case you're not familiar with the story, he was fighting cancer at the time, and unfortunately, he lost that battle in 2018. So it was nice to honor him, knowing that could have happened. Then you have the fuck the Oscars guy who teased what I think was supposed to be A Way Out. Marty O'Donnell, who composed the old Halo titles, showed up to talk about video game music. Then we got this video game music medley. This might actually be one of the highlights of the show. I am a music lover. I don't know if I disclosed that information before, but you might have guessed anyway. Adrift is a game nobody ever talked about. Wikipedia says it wasn't very well liked. Hearthstone won the award for mobile games and was even nominated for Game of the Year. Reggie announced Codename Steam. That's another game nobody ever talks about. Before is a game that doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, and the page for the developer makes zero mention of it, so I assume this game never existed and this trailer was a lie. Speaking of trailers that were straight up lies, Battlefield Hardline. This was one of the first examples I remember of a game being extremely disappointing at launch and triggering a very real conversation about dishonesty in games advertising. They had a category for sports/racing games which put FIFA and NBA 2K up against Mario Kart 8. That game has been out for 8 years and is still better than every single FIFA and NBA game combined. I don't even know why they did this. It's just embarrassing. The Order 1886 was announced. I could not believe how realistic those graphics were. Of course, the game itself would turn out to be 5 hours long, which made people very angry considering it was a $60 game. MLB The Show, skip. Until Dawn is a horror game that appears to have taken some inspiration from Quantic Dream, which I don't know why you'd want to take after them, but hey, that's just me. Far Cry 4 won the Best Shooter award, which is weird because it came out the same year as Wolfenstein: The New Order. CD Projekt Red talked about The Witcher 3. The trailer looks really cool. They're doing a lot of work to hide the fact that 40% of the game is dialogue trees and the rest is 3-hour fetch quests. No Man's Sky. I always forget just how big of a deal this game was leading up to its release. Of course, the higher you stack the ice cream cone, the more likely that shit's gonna fall on the floor and be eaten by ants and have a Crobecat video on it. Evolve also got a Crobecat video, so that's how that went. I think for my money, if I had to pick a game from 2014, I would have said Wolfenstein: The New Order. This game laid the groundwork for that hip, young school, old school type of FPS game that Doom 16 would carry to Mars and back. Or maybe Smash 4, although I didn't really like that one because they removed Snake. I wouldn't really consider Ground Zeroes either, since it's more of a demo for Phantom Pain rather than a full game. And I definitely wouldn't have chosen Dragon Age Inquisition, because I never played that. I love the guys accepting the award though. From the way they were talking, it seems like they really didn't expect to win. Overall, it was nice to see the humble beginnings of what would become the greatest award show in video game history for all the wrong reasons.
Whenever I run into a Nintendo fan, they always ask me one question.
Mother 3.
Hey Reggie, can you tell me about the next Zelda game?
Oh. 7 out of 10. 2015. Now this was the first year that I watched the Game Awards. This was the year I started getting big into gaming news and media. On top of having a YouTube channel that I was actually using now, Metal Gear was also on the brink of ending, which was a big deal. Metal Gear was my entire life at the time, and there was a lot of drama going on around Kojima and Konami at the time, which was a cataclysmic ordeal, and you best believe we're gonna talk about that. Splatoon won the Best Multiplayer award. I guess it must have been a slow year for multiplayer because my memory of Splatoon was not that graceful. Mostly I would keep dying because the gamepad kept drifting, and when it wasn't, I would annihilate everyone because most of the players are 8. They showed off Uncharted 4. This is definitely my favorite Uncharted game, mostly because the shooting is actually good, unlike its predecessors. They showed a close-up of Nadine taking off her shoes because Tarantino has stocks in Naughty Dog. Graphically, this is still better looking than a lot of games that come out today, by which I mean Saints Row. Shaq showed up to announce a remake of Shaq Fu from the Super Nintendo. Sounds like a really stupid idea, but from what I read, the game was incredibly faithful to the original by being very bad. He announced Esports Team of the Year. I've heard of none of these people except Optic Gaming, who won. Telltale Batman, I don't really care about that. Dead Mouse, definitely don't care about that. Troy Baker gave some great advice for aspiring voice actors by telling them all to wait for him and Nolan North to die. As an aspiring voice actor myself, I've been counting the days, and that was 7 years ago, so any time now. The winner for Best Narrative was Her Story, which I don't think I've heard since this award show, but at least it wasn't Witcher. Far Cry Primal, I forgot this existed. Churches would go on to do a lot of the music for Death Stranding, so that was pretty cool. Greg Miller won Trending Gamer, which is cool except for the fact that everyone watching this video said, wait, who's Greg Miller? I have never heard of this man before the Game Awards, and I have never heard of him since. Nominating this guy for Trending Gamer would be like if they nominated me. Psychonauts 2 got a teaser. There were 6 years between this trailer and the release, and from what I heard, it was worth it. Another one for the bucket list, which is now stretching all the way to the South Pole. Undertale was nominated for Best Indie Game, but lost to Rocket League. I would have chosen Undertale, but that's just me. Quantum Break is one of those games that I feel like everyone has heard of, but only 3 people have actually played. I never hear people talk about this game, unless it's like Benchmarks on Digital Foundry. They played a beautiful tribute to Satoru Iwata, who sadly died that year. He was one of the few people who had a broad understanding of gaming, both on the design end and the player end, as well as business, and just being a decent person all around, and it truly was a devastating loss. Still, at least he didn't live to see Color Splash. Cliff Bleszinski talked about Lawbreakers, also known as What's Lawbreakers? Life is Strange won the Games for Impact Award, and who can deny the impact of beans?
I was eating those beans. Are you fucking insane? I was eating those beans! Ugh!
CD Projekt Red won Developer of the Year.
That one didn't age quite so well.
Ori won Best Art Direction. I can live with that. It's a very pretty video game. Rock Band for VR. I keep forgetting just how hard they were pushing VR. It's been 6 years and I've still used it maybe once or twice in my life. The problem with VR is that it's never simple. The console, controller, and television is simple and intuitive. It's been that way since Atari 2600, and most people probably wouldn't want it another way. VR, on the other hand, we're talking console, headset, controllers, sensors, and wide open space, not to mention you're blind to the real life environment around you, so you risk knocking shit over, falling over, or smacking people in the face by accident. No matter how cool it might be, the technology still isn't practical for most people. Then Mark Hamill shows up to announce the winner for Best Action Game.
Metal Gear Solid. Kiefer Sutherland. Oh yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland accepted the award on behalf of Kojima, who was not able to show up. In case you missed or forgot about this big turmoil, Kojima and Konami had a falling out that resulted in the cancellation of Silent Hills, which was insanely highly anticipated. A Silent Hill game with Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, and they canceled it? That's not even evil, that's just stupid. Many people suspect MGS5 is unfinished on account of Konami, while others insist the game isn't unfinished at all and is deliberately left unsatisfying because of symbolism. Either way, Konami offered a final slap in the face by forbidding Kojima from attending the ceremony.
As you noticed, Hideo Kojima is not here with us tonight, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. Mr. Kojima had every intention of being with us tonight, but unfortunately he was informed by a lawyer representing Konami just recently that he would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards. It's
Nothing warms my heart like the unified booing. It feels like a rare moment of unity from the gaming community where they all said, wow, this company kinda sucks, huh?
Viva Seifert, The Witcher 3.
Best performance was given to Viva Seifert for The Witcher 3, except she wasn't actually in The Witcher 3. She was in her story, so somebody fucked up. Look at this CD Projekt guy. He's like, do I know this woman? I blame Geoff. It's all his fault. I mean, it probably wasn't, but I'm blaming him anyway. If you asked me to choose the game of the year for 2015, I would definitely say MGS5. That game is still unmatched as a stealth game and an action game by its contemporaries and most games that would come after. Or what about Bloodborne? You can't go wrong with a Dumbsoft game. Super Mario Maker, Nintendo literally giving players the tools to make their own ROM hacks, but without all the extremely sensitive and highly volatile programs? Hell, I'd even take Undertale. But you know what game I would never, ever choose for Game of the Year in 2015?
The Witcher 3.
Fucking wrong.
Undertale sadly walked away empty-handed. What's funny about that is that it's probably the game I see talked about more consistently today than any other game at these awards, which should tell you something about how much they actually matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I have a lot of nostalgia for this year. It was a climactic year for gaming, with Kojima drama and Iwata's passing. It was a hectic year for gaming and probably the first time I started really paying attention to the industry, for better or worse. 2016 started with a tribute to Hideo Kojima, who actually was allowed to show up after leaving Konami. I don't care if people think it's cringy, I just love the way Geoff talks about Kojima. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind that Geoff is literally in love with him.
He is one of the most principled, loyal, and ethical men I have ever met. And I'm just so honored to call you a friend above everything else, Hideo.
I love you, Geoff.
And everyone will say it's a Russian taunt. But Kojima didn't come empty-handed. He brought Death Stranding with him. As much as I ended up turning around to Death Stranding, this original trailer was so fascinating and bizarre to a point that the final game didn't always manage to live up to. Inside won Best Art Direction, which I'll accept. They had a Schick Razor fighting a competing brand, no fatalities, so that sucks. Doom won Best Action Game, but not Best Action Adventure Game, which is a different category apparently, so that's a shame. iJustine came back for revenge and brought in MatPat as a tag team partner. That Dragon Cancer won the Games for Impact Award. Cancer is an immensely difficult topic and clearly a deeply personal and vicious dragon that the developers had the misfortune of wrestling with. The emotional whiplash between seeing people talk about things like cancer and then seeing the extremely flashy, obnoxious corporate advertisements would become one of the more infamous parts of the Game Awards, but I'm glad this man was allowed to have his moment anyway. Boogie2988 won Trending Gamer. Today, Boogie has become a subject of ridicule and controversy, but back then, he was a bit of an inspiring figure. A man with that much physical and mental baggage made a name for himself being goofy on the internet.
I want a Mountain Dew! Oh my god, yeah, Mountain Dew!
He was improving himself, losing weight, he even got married, and that's where I'm gonna end the story. In a few ways, his story really hit home for me. I don't have the trauma that he does, but I discovered his videos at a very awkward point in my life. On top of being a fat autismo, I was also in high school, so there were a lot of growing pains, and his videos kinda made me go, hey, maybe I can do alright. A man this down and out getting a win on YouTube, as sentimental as it might sound, it made the dream feel real. And even though I don't watch his stuff that much anymore, it was nice at the time to see him celebrated at the Game Awards. Bitch Bablinski talked about Lawbreakers again. Doom won music and sound design, so they had Mick Gordon do some live performance. He even played some Quake 2 music, which is really fucking banger. It's good to see him get the recognition he deserves. Recently, he came out with some allegations of bad business that went down with some id executives with respect to Doom Eternal's soundtrack, so it's a little bittersweet with that new context. Either way, I love this man's music, even if the executives don't respect it at all. Nolan North won Best Performance. He was one of 3 people nominated from Uncharted 4. Naughty Dog games always seem to win big in narrative and performance based on the 2 examples that I have. Surely that's enough to establish a pattern. Nolan spoke up for all the unsung heroes at Naughty Dog, those being the programmers and animators. It's an important message, especially today. Reggie showed off Breath of the Wild. It's easy to forget how hyped this game was now that it's 5 years old and the sequel is just months away. The last big dog Zelda title before this was Squidward Sword for the Wii, which I did not much care for. Needless to say, I loved Breath of the Wild when it came out, but this promotional gameplay was very wonky. The frame rate was dog shit, and Bill is somehow worse in the game than he was at Skyward Sword. Mark Cerny was introduced as the creator of Knack, which I am convinced they did as a joke to get Donkey to make a crack about it to drive engagement, which to my memory didn't work. Anytime someone mentions Knack, all I can assume is that they're looking for the fabled donkey boost, because I have no idea why else any human being would bring up Knack. Uncharted won narrative, because of course it did. Blizzard also won an award for Best Game Direction for Overwatch. Nothing about that aged well. Geoff showed off a gaming PC made to look like a World War I tank, which is cooler than the actual game it's based on. They showed off Mass Effect Andromeda. Conveniently, the characters' faces are usually obscured by helmets and camera angles, or only show up for a brief period, at least for the first half, but then they just give up. I guess the plan might have been to brush it up before it launched the following year, but clearly that didn't end up happening. The focus seemed much more on gameplay, which wasn't particularly good either, so I don't know why I'm still watching this. This is just sad. My game of the year was easily Doom. Unfortunately, they did not agree. They selected Overwatch, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm giving this year a 6 out of 10. This was a bit of a slow year for gaming, so it only makes sense that the awards show would be a little mediocre as well. 2017, on the other hand, is considered by many to be the greatest year for video games in the contemporary sense. And with a big dog Mario and Zelda title in the same year, a 2-hit Nintendo combo, I can definitely see why. You also got Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. There was also Horizon, which will go down in history as the open world game that came out in 2017 that wasn't Breath of the Wild. The next Horizon would be overshadowed by Elden Ring, so I am convinced everyone who works on this series is cursed. It started with an amazing musical medley of all kinds of iconic video game themes, which I've come to appreciate as being one of the highlights of the show in recent years. Right out of the gate, they started with the Best Narrative award for What Remains of Edith Finch. This is another one of those games that I feel like everyone has heard of, but I don't know anyone who's actually played it. Or if they have, they're not telling me, and they really should. In the Valley of the Gods' creator was acquired by Valve, and they still don't have a release date for the game, so it probably doesn't exist. Wolfenstein won Best Action Game, 100% deserved in my opinion. This game just gets me pumped to whoop some ass. I love it. Del Toro showed off The Shape of Water, which is a weird and wonderful movie, but I don't know what it's doing at a video game show. I guess he was using his buddy Kojima as a Trojan horse to show off his own shit. He and Kojima showed up like a wrestling tag team to announce the winner for Best Art Direction, which was Cuphead. Definitely deserved. Have you ever tried animating the old-fashioned way? I can barely even animate in Blender. Aonuma showed up to play with weapons because everyone knows the best game designers are just children at heart, and children love swinging around dangerous objects. Carol Shaw won the Industry Icon Award. She did a lot of work on Atari and old school Activision titles, so I guess you could say she's OG. That's original gamer. Gotta pay big respects. Soul Calibur 6, I don't know what it is about 3D fighting games, but I could never get into them. I'm not great at 2D ones either, but I just don't even bother with 3D. Then Geoff just spits out 5 different awards like it's nothing before inviting Lana from Archer to announce some more.
What's up?
Wow, she's so cool. She announced the award for Best Debut Indie Game, which of course was won by Cuphead. Personally, I would have chosen Golf Story or Castlevania for theater kids. Conan is back to announce the nominees for Game of the Year. I cannot believe PUBG was nominated among Mario and Zelda. That to me is insanity, but that's why I'm not hosting an awards show, because I do not have the sophisticated palate to fully appreciate the prestige of PUBG. I've never recorded this long, my throat is killing me. They announced Bayonetta 3, which came out a couple weeks ago. It's supposed to be pretty good from what I hear. Still haven't played it, but I probably will. Another trailer for Death Stranding. Norman Reedus gives the "once there was an explosion" monologue. The game was still extremely mysterious at this time, and debatably, the game should have kept it that way instead of explaining everything with the excessive depth and detail of a political scientist on the autism spectrum.
Oh yeah.
Someone starts talking French.
Agrandi à joie à la Sega Genesis.
Another musical performance shows up. Witchfire was announced, still not out, but early next year it might be. Fuck the Oscars guy showed up again, and he said this. You're not gonna believe what he said, okay? You won't believe it. He said,
"Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you! I'll tell you!"
Andy Serkis showed up to present the Best Performance Award, which reminds me, whatever happened to that Smeagol game? Well, Wikipedia says it was coming out in September, and that didn't happen, so I'm really hoping this game is being delayed for quality reasons and not because of management issues. It's like Miyamoto said, a delayed game is maybe good sometimes, but a rushed game is probably bad all the time. The winner was the actress for Hellblade, which is yet another in a long list of games that I hear about once a year but I've never seen anyone play. Ed Boon announced the award to Breath of the Wild for Best Game Direction. I would have accepted Mario Odyssey as an answer as well, but I can't really argue with this. I have at least 100 hours in this game, and every time I pick it up, I lose an entire day of my life, and it's no surprise that it won Game of the Year at the same time. I probably would have chosen Mario given that ultimatum though, especially considering it was very clearly favored in the musical tribute.
So let's all jump up super high, high up in the sky. There's no power up like dancing. You know that you're my superstar. No one else can take me this far. I'm flipping the switch. Get ready for this song. Let's do the Odyssey.
But at the end of the day, this show was alright, so I'm gonna give it a 7.5. It had the advantage of actually having a lot of good games come out, which 2016 did not. 2018's presentation started with the presidents of the three big boys standing on the stage at once as a show of unity and peace. Then Jacksepticeye and Pokimane presented the award for Best Narrative. Some deranged son of a bitch nominated Detroit Become Human, which is the game where Mr. Krabs calls someone a cocksucker.
Perkins, you fucking cocksucker!
Of course, the actual winner was Red Dead 2. You're gonna be seeing a lot of Red Dead 2. That game pretty much devoured everything around it this year. Jonah Hill was there for some reason to introduce the industry icon Greg Thomas, who made a bunch of sports games. Christoph Waltz and Rosa Salazar announced the best performance. All I can hear is Christoph's character from Inglourious Bastards, which is the most unintentionally chilling thing in the world.
In a sense, the actor plays the surrogate for their audience, their entry point into the game's world and personalities.
Roger Clark won the award, and all I can say is, you're alright, boy. But I would have chosen Dutch instead. Far Cry New Dawn is a game that I swear I've never heard of. At this point, I am convinced half of the Far Cry series doesn't actually exist and it's just a psyop. They announced Hades, which is going to be a very big deal in 2 years. There was Ancestors, the monkey game made by an Assassin's Creed veteran. In this game, you play as Monkey and fight your way through millions of years of human evolution. From what I heard, the game is a little wonky, but what do you expect? You're playing as Homo erectus, it's not gonna be perfect. Brendan Urie presented the award for Best Score, which is a really good category to have. Music is probably one of the lower things on the priority list for what makes a game for a lot of people, which is kinda sad because it's one of the things that I always remember the most. Red Dead won this category again, and at least one mutual I have on Twitter was pissed off because it wasn't Celeste. I can definitely sympathize with that, but I mean, Red Dead 2 also had very good music, so I don't feel way too bad one way or another. BioWare showed off Anthem, but of course BioWare was known then for Mass Effect Andromeda, so yeah. Crash Bandicoot crashed the party, if you know what I'm saying.
Read it, boy.
The voice actors for Kratos and Boy announced Content Creator of the Year, which of course was given to the guy who tried to get a bunch of people to do Fortnite dances at Times Square. Sonic Fox was the best esports player, one of the few that I actually heard of before. Sonic Fox also won the award for Longest Game Awards speech in history.
I really won this shit. Oh my god. I kinda just really enjoy playing video games competitively. Enjoy the rush of like beating people up, you know? My best friend, one of my closest friends, oh my god, I'm nervous. Whether I win or lose, I'm gonna be donating at least like 10K of the prize winning to his friend. Obviously, I'm a furry, so shout out to the furries. I've been any furries in the year. Gay, black, a furry, pretty much. Thank you so much.
A Muppet made an appearance. There was also a classic Jim Henson character. Yeah, I know, shut up. Celeste won Best Indie Game, which I hear is actually an insanely good video game. I haven't played it yet, but I can already tell it'll piss me off. They performed a lot of music from Bread Guy 2. The soundtrack from that game is really great, so I don't blame them. Ed Boon showed up to announce the best sports or racing game, except a weird glitch happened where he showed off Mortal Kombat 11 instead, because nobody gives a shit about sports or racing. Ed Boon is known for being a tricksy hobbit, and there is no doubt in my mind that he deliberately interrupted the sports award because he knew nobody cared about it at all. God of War won Best Direction, not surprising. Fortnite won Best Ongoing Game, that is surprising. In a now infamous plot twist of a reveal, Joker was revealed for Smash Ultimate, which was extremely new at the time, and even though it feels like an eternity ago, I remember when Ultimate was still a massive deal. Everyone had a collective heart attack from this. I really do feel like I developed PTSD from Smash Discourse though. One day some kid who was too young to remember Ultimate is gonna say to me, "My daddy says half the roster was anime characters with swords," and I'm just gonna be like, nope, stop. We're not talking about that. We're never speaking about this again. I was dead sure that Red Dead 2 was gonna win Game of the Year. As much as I shit on this game for its miserable controls and its repetitive brain-dead campaign missions, the game is still an artistic and technical marvel in pretty much every other respect. God of War won instead, which was surprising at the time, but still understandable. This show was a solid 8, I would say. There were a lot of nice surprises, and it was a solid year for gaming in general. I don't know why AC Odyssey was nominated for Game of the Year, but I'm glad it didn't win because that would have made me incredibly sad. 2019's show started with a beautiful performance of the Death Stranding song. Death Stranding was definitely my choice for Game of the Year in 2019. Granted, that was pretty much the only new game I played that year at the time. Kojima will forever be cursed to make games that are so far in the future that nobody understands until it becomes a reality, resulting in the audience not being able to fully appreciate it when it comes out. Disco Elysium won Best Narrative. This is a game where I actually do know people who played it, so I can confirm that it's a real video game. A number of the awards were just spitfired and didn't even take time to give a trophy. The show was slowly going in that direction over the years, but it was kinda disappointing anyway. Everybody was expecting a new Smash character to be announced. There wasn't one, but at least Xbox Series X was shown off, and I still have zero intention of getting one. Control won Best Art Direction. The award was presented by Ikumi Nakamura, who is a very funny person.
Please bear with my English.
Norman Reedus announced DMC5 as the best action-adventure game. They had this lame thing where this character from this game that I don't care about was singing Christmas carols.
Where the video games?
Bunsen and Baker showed up for some VR crap before announcing the Games for Impact award for Greece. I have never heard of this game in my life, so that should tell you something about the impact it had on me. Luigi's Mansion 3 won Best Family Game, or as a lot of people are calling it now, the Nintendo category. When Nintendo doesn't have heavy-hitting Game of the Year contenders, they can usually fall back on the Family Game category. They brought back the Fortnite guy to announce the Best Multiplayer Game award. I would have chosen Tetris 99, but they didn't, so they're stupid because I'm a genius, in case you haven't figured that out. Ghost of Tsushima got a live musical trailer, those are always fun. Fortnite won Best Ongoing Game again. I don't know who these people cheering are, considering most of the people who play Fortnite aren't old enough to be here. Despite retiring from Nintendo, Reggie will always be a gaming icon, which is why he came back again to present the Best Indie Game award. To be honest, he should host the entire show. He is more well-spoken and profound than any other person who has gotten on this stage. Disco Elysium won yet another award here, so I'm starting to think I should go and play it. Death Stranding won Best Game Direction. It's always nice to see Kojima doing well, especially in 2019, because this was his first big project after his falling out with Konami. It closed out with a wonderful musical medley of all the Game of the Year nominees before Vin Diesel announced the winner. Smash was nominated since it missed the deadline for the previous award show. I would have been fine with Smash winning, but Geoff had other plans. Sekiro would reign supreme tonight, and really, I can't blame them. It's FromSoft, and everyone knows their games are flawless. Except when they're not, and they make you fight the God-skinned noble and apostle at the same time. Just a very fair and well-designed boss fight. Fuck you! Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give this year a 5 out of 10. There was just so much fucking noise and bullshit at this ceremony that at some point I genuinely forgot why I was even watching it in the first place. 2020 was the year of The Last of Us Part 2. Much like Red Dead 2, that game kinda devoured everything around it, and a lot of people, myself included, did not think it really deserved to. Even outside of the Game Awards, every conversation somehow led back to this game. In retrospect, that might have been its greatest achievement, the fact that we collectively decided it was worth talking about so much. Most video games, when they're divisive or controversial, we shit on them for like a couple weeks and then we never talk about them again. Last of Us 2 was like Civil War, where both sides of the is it a masterpiece, is it pretentious drivel had such ardent and passionate defenders that it still gets talked about today. I think in my case, it's alright. It's a technical showcase and the dialogue and acting is on fire, but the actual plot goes off on too many tangents and there are so many different factions and whatnot, which kinda flies in the face of the strengths of the first game, which was simple stories driven by complex characters. But hey, what am I talking about? This ain't a Last of Us review, this is the Gay Awards. Let's stay focused here, alright? I can't believe you tried to distract me with Last of Us. What's the matter with you? Unfortunately, a lot of awards were kinda spitfired again. Awards that used to have trophies and acceptance speeches in previous shows were relegated to a 20-second round of Geoff Keighley going, "Hey, the award goes to this, hey, the award goes to that, hey." It is worth noting that this show was heavily compromised by COVID restrictions. A lot of winners and performances were joining over a Zoom call. It wasn't ideal, but it added a human element to it. For a while, it was kinda just routine that we all did stuff through Teams or Zoom, so it's at least a little relatable. They were sure to bring a Smash reveal this time. I don't know who I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't Sephiroth. In retrospect, I almost wonder if Square had some kind of deal with Nintendo. I mean, they got not one, not two, but 3 DLC characters. No Master Chief, Doom Guy is relegated to a Mii costume, but you can have 3 Kingdom Fantasy Quest guys as fully playable characters. Alright, the most shocking announcement this year was Perfect Dark. This series had been dormant for a long time, like most of those old Rare properties, and this was kind of exciting to hear. Unfortunately, we've heard almost nothing since, so it's entirely possible this game isn't actually coming out. They showed off Back 4 Blood, which was supposed to be Left 4 Dead 3. Instead, it got a Crobecat video, so that's how that went. Oh, you're not gonna believe who won Best Narrative. That's right, Final Fantasy You silly bitch.
Yeah. You owe me a
Game Award. Swedish Chef showed up. The Muppets are kinda like Game Awards canon at this point. 2020 was the 35th anniversary of Super Mario Bros, which was a big deal. I don't know if you've heard of this Mario guy, but he's kind of important. There was an orchestrated performance of all the greatest Mario themes, but they left out Peanut Park because they're a bunch of bastards. Arc 2 has graphics, lots of graphics, and Vin Diesel. Among Us won Best Multiplayer. I've still never played it, and I have no idea how it works. Ghost and Goblins Resurrection was a wild announcement. It was already a bullshit NES game that could turn the most well-adjusted person into the Joker, except this time, graphics. More graphics. Last of Us 2 won Best Audio over Doom Eternal. I'm not angry. Ghost of Tsushima won Player's Voice. I voted Doom, but at least it wasn't Last of Us. Fuck the Oscars guy showed up in a mocap suit to show off It Takes Two. The game wasn't ready to release yet, but it's gonna be a very big deal in exactly a year. You just wait. Reginald presented the award for innovation in accessibility, which was given to Last of Us 2. The only thing that bugs me about accessibility discussions is how muddied the waters get between accessibility and difficulty. Like, I've seen debates on whether or not Souls games are ableist for not having an easy mode, and I feel like that's where you start to lose people. Amogus won again for Best Mobile Game. Personally, I would have chosen the Sudoku app that eats 50 megabytes of mobile data to show you ads if you don't turn it off. They played Future Days by Pearl Jam. I would have preferred Even Flow, but whatever. Last of Us won Best Game Direction. That was a bit controversial at the time in the wake of crunch-related allegations, but it doesn't matter because it also won Game of the Year. It was nice to see an indie game like Hades get nominated for this award, even if everyone knew Last of Us had it in the bag from the get-go. The game was rigged from the start. Doom Eternal was my champion this year. To this day, it might still be my favorite FPS game of all time. It's so fast, so brutal, so intense, so purely fun. The aesthetic is phenomenal. The soundtrack is amazing. It is one of the single most polished things I have ever played in my life. You want to know how many awards it won? 0. So that's the score I'm giving this show. 0. And finally, we have last year's award show. Ever since the Smash Fighters Pass ended, every big gaming event kinda got the volume turned down. This show sadly continued the pattern of ramming through the awards to get to the ads. Even with far less stringent COVID restrictions, there was just so much nonsense. Geoff made a vague statement about game creators being harassed and abused, obviously alluding to the Activision Blizzard scandals which were coming out at the time, though he never mentions them by name because when you run a video game show, you can't piss off the advertisers. Then they brought out Gustavo Fring to present the Best Indie Game Award to Kena Bridge of Spirits. And of course Star Wars Eclipse by Quantic Dream. I hope they bring Mr. Krabs back for this one. Ellie and Abby showed up to present the award for Best Performance, which was won by Maggie Robertson, the actress for Lady Dimitrescu, whose breasts set the internet on fire. Trailer for Sonic 2 with Jim Carrey crashing the party on a giant screen like Bill Gates. They showed off Horizon Forbidden West, which had the tremendous misfortune of releasing just before Elden Ring, just as its predecessor did with Breath of the Wild. Slitterhead was announced by one of the former directors of the old Silent Hill titles. There was an old-fashioned Roaring Twenties sounding musical performance for the Cuphead DLC. What's hilarious about Cuphead is that the presentation is so whimsical and funny, but the gameplay makes Doom look like Elmo's letter adventure for the N64. I love this ad, it perfectly captures everything Cuphead is about. Everything surrounding it is so meticulously detailed to fully immerse you in the time period it's supposed to take place in. Sonic Frontiers was shown off. I do still want to play this game, but it's a $90 Canadian purchase, so I really hope it's actually fun. I think Sonic fans are paranoid that if a bad review shows up, Sega will trash everything and start from square zero, no matter how much the core fanbase actually likes what they're doing. In the case of Frontiers, this is being hailed as Sonic's 19th comeback arc in a row, so I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't want to send the message that this game is bad by any measure. Kojima showed up to promote Del Toro's new movie, and he returned the favor by presenting the award for art direction.
You know, one franchise I love the art direction in? Silent Hill. I hope we get a new one of those.
That one did age quite so well.
The award went to Deathloop, that's understandable. Dream won Content Creator of the Year.
That one didn't age quite so well.
Forspoken is a game most famous for that trailer that came out earlier this year with its Avengers Endzone tier dialogue. Oh shit, it's a new Saints Row! This was one of the few games I was looking forward to. It was a game I never thought they would make, and now that they did, I kinda wish they didn't. Metroid Dread won the award for Best Action Adventure Game. I am so glad about that. Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Borderlands is a series that I kinda grew out of. I loved it when I was 16, but unfortunately, I haven't been 16 since 1852, so I don't really care anymore. Reginald returned once again and gave the award for Best Ongoing Game to Final Fantasy XIV. At least it wasn't Fortnite. Plague Tale Requiem and Dying Light 2 both showed up. Both of those games were nominated for a bunch of awards this year, so I guess you could call this foreshadowing. They showed a trailer for the Halo TV show, which is a show where Master Chief has sex, which is proof that none of them played the games. This is one of the most aggressively sex-free games in history, and to trample it with such impropriety is beyond disappointing. One of the pot guys from Elden Ring showed up with an Elden Ring trailer. At the time, I didn't care about it at all because I didn't realize that Elden Ring was actually going to be an insanely good video game. I didn't care about Souls stuff at all back then, but it turns out the fan base was right. The Souls games are objectively better than your favorite game will ever be. They showed a scene from the new Matrix. I'm not gonna lie, I thought this movie was alright. Definitely a little heavy-handed, but nothing comforts anxiety like a little nostalgia. They also showed off a Matrix game running in Unreal 5, and it looks like real. And after all these years, and after all this time, Neil Druckmann comes out to present the Game of the Year award. My choice for Game of the Year was Metroid Dread. You know I love that game. I expected Resident Evil to win, or maybe Deathloop, but the last game I expected to win was It Takes Two. But at the same time, I am really happy that it did. A game that was truly unique and innovative and whimsical winning instead of a mega budget shoot game with The Witcher 3 is a really nice thing to see. And I gotta say, fuck the Oscars guy really pulled through on this one. I love this dude. So that was a brief history of the Game Awards. Well, Doom Eternal was robbed, a bunch of mediocre games were announced, 3 good ones were announced, and at least 20 of those things still haven't been made, so that's a lot of fun. Overall, there was a good mix of fun and entertainment and non-fun and non-entertainment, so really, it's just like life. Now before I close the video off, I'm gonna announce my choices for this year's Game Awards categories. For most anticipated game, I nominate Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Not everyone likes the Breath of the Wild formula, but I think there's still possibilities that are unexplored on that front. Even though we learned some of the new features and mechanics, the game is still very mysterious and unsettling. I am hoping it goes for Majora's Mask vibes. I would love something weird like that. For Best Adaptation, I nominate Cyberpunk Edge Runners. This show touches on a lot of the same themes and attitudes of the game, but follows a new cast of characters years before the game actually happens. All the environments and worlds will be familiar to those who played it, but on top of all that, it stands alone as a beautiful story that actually made me feel something, which is a really hard thing to pull off for a video game adaptation. If you haven't watched it yet, what the hell are you even doing? For Best Family Game, I nominate Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It took them decades to bring Kirby to 3D, and from what I can tell, it was worth it. Best Action Adventure, well, the only one of these that I've actually played so far is Stray. I imagine some of these other games are probably more fun, but I cannot in good conscience vote for something that I didn't play. Same with the indie category. I've been wanting to play Neon White though, that game looks fun as hell. There's also Cult of the Lamb. This cutesy, hellish art style reminds me a lot of Hazmat Hotel, and I have to keep reminding myself that they had nothing to do with this. For Best Audio Design, I would say Elden Ring. Score and music, on the other hand, probably Metal Hellsinger. I mean, you got people from System of a Down and Lamb of God. How you gonna step to that? And the Game of the Year for 2022 goes to Elden Saints Row.